Well, hello. My name is David Rowley, and I'm a professor in the URI College of Pharmacy. I'm a natural products chemist. I do research as well as teach. And one of the great pleasures of being a professor at URI is the wonderful individuals that come through our program and graduate and then go off and do amazing things in the world. And I appreciate you joining us here tonight so that you can hear about some of these individuals and their stories. So whether you're joining us live or in the future, we're very happy that you are interested in the graduate program at URI. And we invite you, if you should have any questions, to feel free to put them into the chat tonight or email us and find out about opportunities that might be available to you at URI in the area of biomedical sciences. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Tara Marie Joanno. She graduated from the Bachelor of Science in Pharmaceutical Sciences program at URI and is currently in the master's program. And Tara will be moderating our discussion here. And Tara, away to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rowley, for that introduction. And thank you to all the panelists and for the viewers who are here. I'm really excited about this panel because I think it's not only beneficial for the prospective graduate students, it's also really great for current students like myself to learn a little bit more about future career paths from URI and tips and tricks about how to handle life in graduate school. So I'd really like to go through and have each one of the panelists introduce themselves. You can provide your name, current position, the programs that you did at URI, the year that you graduated from URI. And I'm going to start with Rob, just because he's the first person on my screen, and then we'll go through.
All right, thanks so much, Tara. Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Deering. I'm currently working as an associate medical director at Alnylam Pharmaceuticals. And at URI, I was one of the long timers. I went to pharmacy school and decided to also go to graduate school at URI. So I got my PharmD in 2013 and my Ph.D. in 2017. And there I focused on pharmaceutical sciences with a concentration in medicinal chemistry and pharmacognosy. So working in Dr. Rowley's lab.
Thank you, Rob. And then I have Supriya on my list as well.
Hi, everyone. Supriya Kulkarni. I currently work as a senior scientist, more as a project toxicologist with Gilead Sciences in the Bay Area. I came to University of Rhode Island College of Pharmacy as a master's student back in 2006, stayed to complete my master's and PhD, and I graduated in 2013, went on to do a postdoc, and then joined Gilead and have been working there since.
Thank you so much, Supriya. And then I also have Nick.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Belviso. I started my time at URI back in 2010, where I started pharmacy school and quickly went through all the curriculum that we pretty much had to offer. And I moved on to my master's in business and then back for my PhD in health outcomes research. And what health outcomes research is kind of a mix between pharmacoeconomics and pharmacoepidemiology. And so currently I took a job last year, just about last year, with Biogen, and I'm a senior biostatistician there, where I work on all different kinds of real world evidence projects and data generation.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Karen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Karen Mueller. I am a sort of non-traditional route, I guess. So I did a concurrent PharmD and master's degree in pharmaceutics at URI under Dr. Akalagi. And at the completion of that, I moved on to University of Buffalo and Roswell Park Cancer Institute and did a postdoc there in the oncology space, and moved then to Novartis Pharmaceuticals, where I worked more in a clinical pharmacology capacity. I was there for about 10 years, and then I moved most recently to a small startup company called Genti Bio, which is based up in Cambridge. And there I'm kind of wearing multiple hats because it's a startup in that sense. I'm doing the function of the translational sciences, but in addition, I'm leading the first clinical program into clinic. So that is my background.
Thank you all for sharing such a wide variety of backgrounds. And a lot of the students who are going to be listening to this panel are looking to see which graduate school that they would like to attend. And many of you did multiple degrees at URI, but I'm wondering what was it that prompted you to choose URI as a graduate school, to choose it for one degree and then to continue and stay on for yet another degree? A lot of internal students at URI in particular would find a lot of benefit in listening to some of your advice. If you guys, any one of you could share a little bit about that.
I'm happy to start. I think for me, I mean, it seems like many of us have started in the PharmD program at URI. I think the really exciting thing was that they offered the concurrent ability to pursue a master's degree with the PharmD. Coming into URI, I knew I wanted to work in the pharmaceutical industry. I was really interested in pharmacy itself, and I thought that was a really good foundation to get the clinical experience, but I knew I wanted to pursue the pharmaceutical industry. So I felt that it was a really good thing to pursue. And it was one of the reasons why I initially came to URI, because they offered that ability to kind of pursue it concurrently.
Yeah, that's a good point, Karen. And I'll just add a little, I think a lot of, why I decided to go to grad school is more of a question for me, since I was kind of already enrolled at URI, about like why I decided to stay at URI, not why I decided to go there in the first place. But I think part of it, I would have loved to know beforehand that I could have done some of my PhD up front as opposed to putting them back to back. And so that's kind of like a lesson learned. But at the end of the day, the opportunity to go and do research in the state-of-the-art facility, which was pretty much brand new at the time I was transitioning, was, that was fantastic. And then just a lot of the people at URI were fantastic. And being able to pursue different research projects and opportunities that I was passionate about was something that I really got an opportunity to do at URI. That, could I have searched long and hard to find the right place that allowed me to do that as well? Maybe, but I knew I had that here. And so that really encouraged me to stay on.
I guess I'll go next. To follow on from what Rob said, I think it is the people. I came to URI to do a master's, and the moment I came here, joined the Pharm Talks program, I was rotating with multiple professors, all of them wonderful, and decided upon Angela Slitt's lab. And I think it was the lab that made me stay on for my PhD.
And actually following up on that, Supriya, you were the only one on this panel actually that came to URI separate for a different, for your graduate degree from a different undergraduate institution. How did you find that transition? Because a lot of people watching this, or it might not be URI students, and they're coming in from another institution and transitioning to graduate degrees, whether it's a master's or directly to a PhD here. Could you share a little bit about that?
That's a great question. I'll start by saying that my perspective might be slightly different because it was almost 15 years ago now. And I came in from India. So I was fresh off the boat after I completed my pharmacy degree in India, coming into URI. When you are a transitioning individual from a completely different culture, a completely different nation, my perspective is different. I chose pharmacy, University of Rhode Island and College of Pharmacy because of some of my relatives' experiences who were a part of this institution. So from there, I got more confidence about coming into this university and pursuing a Pharm Talks degree here.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. For me, I started obviously with my PharmD and the PharmD program, but it was a pretty easy decision for me to apply to the graduate school, and particularly in the health outcomes research field, because those are the classes that I enjoyed the most. Dr. Kogut, who headed up that particular program, his classes were always engaging to me in terms of with focus on pharmacoeconomics. And so, it's just a natural kind of progression for me to at least apply and see if I could, if they would accept me and keep me in the college for another few more years.
And thank you guys for sharing all of that. It's nice to see how you've been able to maybe combine some of your graduate degrees or combine your undergraduate and graduate experiences. So how has URI in particular prepared you for your various roles? And I know each of you are in different spots. Some are in lab positions and some are not. How did you feel that URI in the various degrees that you pursued, you were able to combine that and really go out into the workforce, utilizing all of those skills that this university prepared you with?
Yeah, so I can kick this one off. I think I tend to go on and on about things, so try to keep it short. But it's essentially learning to be a healthcare provider in pharmacy school was something that I've been able to lean on, having now transitioned into the pharmaceutical industry and particularly the medical side. But really going to grad school and learning how to be a scientist in addition to that has really allowed me to take my career to a different level that I would not have been able to do just having gotten my PharmD. And that's not to say that I couldn't have learned that on the job, but I think that's really one of the major takeaways from grad school for me, was learning how to do research to approach a problem that I had absolutely no experience with solving and no background in the techniques or the skills necessary. And that was a lot of the research that I was able to do in grad school, really putting yourself out there and stretching your skills and techniques to a new level. And I think that that's been just a valuable skill to translate over into types of careers that are in the pharmaceutical industry, especially for me, medical.
I mean, the one thing I can say from my perspective is the program that I went through and the general approach, at least when I was there, and things may have changed over the last 11 years, but I'm sure that it's still maintained, is that the rigor of the program is there, and it's designed really to, allow students to work collaboratively with the people in their lab. I think in my lab, we had probably 5 other graduate students. Most were PhDs at the time when I was there. And we relied very heavily on one another to work together to solve problems, whether it was my project having a problem or their project having a problem. That collaborative spirit was really developed there, and that's carried forward into the roles. I think a lot of PhD students that we hire now that are interviewing and saying, I'm in a lab by myself right now, and I want to join your company because you have an ability for me to have that collaborative environment. You see a very different mentality and a very different skill set when people are coming in from an N of 1 lab versus a very collaborative type lab, where you have a lot of exposure to helping one another out to solve problems and relying on one another to really drive the science. So I think the rigor of the program is really designed, in my opinion, to prepare people to be very effective scientists, as Rob was saying, just thinking about the science, but then also, if you don't know, work with your team to address it. And I think that was one thing that they really focused on when I was there.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so I was just gonna add on to that, and I kind of felt the same thing with that Karen had in her experience. The program, whatever your respective concentration is, you'll learn the skills that you'll need to succeed. But I think the intangible thing that URI offers that might not be offered in other places is specifically those professional relationships, how to work closely with someone who might be a faculty position, and also how to work closely with your peers as well. So I think it sounds like that's kind of a common theme within the graduate school, in terms of kind of an intangible skill that you might not learn necessarily at other places. But again, for me, coming into starting my kind of first career position a little over a year ago now, I had the basic skills to succeed, but you still learn a lot on the job. So having the ability to work with your peers and your superiors to learn as much as you can, in addition to kind of providing value added as well, right? Your experiences and your expertise and whatever it may be. So I think, the graduate program is kind of geared to set you up for that type of success in terms of that type of avenue.
I think I'll go a little bit more in details about this, sort of the same general theme that's running here. Just besides the collaborative working spirit and working in teams, 2 of the things that I think are helping me in my current job are, at least in the Master's and PhD Pharm Talks program, the curriculum. It's sort of a mix between metabolism, toxicology, Sutics and medchem. It's sort of a mix with people taking a lot of the basic courses. When you're working in a team, you don't realize that you need to have that sort of background understanding of a lot of those basics that come into play when you're developing a drug. The other important factor, I think, which maybe I would have had it in other universities too, but helped me a lot was joining professional societies. Being able to join societies, going and presenting there, being able to mingle with many more like-minded peers was definitely very helpful.
On
And-
that exact, oh, Rob, continue. Keep
Oh,
the
I was just going to
conversation
add just one other point on there. Kind of something that Karen said to me struck a little bit. Like, not only was the experience very collaborative within the lab, but I can't tell you how many projects where, whether it was Dr. Split's lab, like going downstairs to work with, molecular biology on a different project, or getting someone to run in their cell lines, or even going off campus to someone who has, drug resistant bacteria that we could run a panel of potential compounds on. And there was just so many good collaborative, even not only from like teaching about how to work with people collaboratively, but also like the projects themselves that, URI offered. I thought that was just a really, really rewarding and educational experience.
To sort of just go on, add another point, for example, I basically chose who to work with in my postdoc from a seminar that was presented by him, Dr. Jim Boyer, at the departmental seminars. So those seminars where people come in and talk about their research, at least for a student who is MS PhD, those are extremely helpful in knowing, I can do something in this, or I can do something in that. So those were very helpful as well.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to add that I think is interesting, because URI does not have a medical school, right? And a lot of big graduate schools have a medical school. But I think one of the really interesting and cool things is that a lot of the professors have connections into the VA hospital. A lot of the PharmDs do to bring in some of that clinical research, or they work with Brown University. So you really can find that although there's no medical school affiliated with URI, that they have really amazing connections with the medical community to really bring in the clinical research. So it's not just a true bench science institution. It also has a lot of ongoing clinical research, which I think is really exciting for a university of its size that is where it is. I mean, that was, to me, was super exciting, and really combine that PharmD and then taking it forward into the pharmaceutical space was being able to really bring together that clinical element. And for me, that's what gets me excited. So that was a highly attractive aspect of it. And I mean, I can tell you from a recollection, I can tell you that there's a lot of exposure too in the different labs. I remember like one specific instance where we had an MSL, a medical science liaison, coming in to talk to the professor about some research that we were doing. And I remember going to lunch and talking about my experiment and what I was doing and driving, and it was trying to establish a collaboration so we could work with an industry partner, which was really exciting to me there, because you have that ability to not only establish a connection with an industry partner while you're in grad school, but you're getting exposure almost peripherally to sort of what they do as a career path. So that's another exciting element that I saw at URI that was allowing students to really interact almost with industry partners in that capacity.
That's very true, Karen. I think the guest lecturers who used to come, who are a lot of scientists associated with the pharmaceutical industry around, were extremely helpful, because they give you sort of an insight into what drug development looks like if you're actually interested in pursuing it. And it's interesting because some of them I'm working with now as peers, as colleagues. So that helped a lot as well.
It's so wonderful to hear you guys speak of the collaborative spirit of URI and how integrated the curriculum is, because here I am years after some of you, and I can really speak to that in my own classes, that we take classes with students from multiple tracks in the Pharmaceutical Sciences graduate program. Multiple labs collaborate on projects, not just within the Department of Biomedical and Pharmaceutical Sciences, but with other departments across campus, Department of Chemistry, the College of Environment and Life Sciences. And I really love hearing about the way that you guys got your foot into the door with careers and found your exposure. Do you find that if there was any specific professional organization or research opportunity, or maybe fellowships or internships, whether within the university or outside of the university, that you guys did that helped prepare you for your career?
Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, so I think from my side, I had, I think when I was in pharmacy school, I did the INBRE program, and I'm not sure if that's still active. I assume so. And that was a great program to really identify people to work with, understand the core technology that's there, and all of the awesome instruments that they have, which are really high tech, you know, for a university to have. They're really kind of standard on par with what we have in the pharmaceutical labs now in the industry. And then I had also done an internship over one of my summers at Pfizer, where I was working in the lab and doing a lot of characterization of antibody screening for identification of antibodies for, you know, future clinical use. So I think those experiences were definitely very important in my career. And I think one of the really valuable things during those interviews with those prospective positions was looking at the experience that I had at URI. And I think that was a really deciding factor for actually getting those opportunities.
Yeah, and kind of similar to something that Karen mentioned earlier, actually one of the first job that I had out of graduate school was at OceanSpray, and they were supporting one of the research projects that I was working on while in graduate school. And I think that was like an immediate tangible benefit, you know, to me, to be able to transition from a grad program supporting, you know, the goals of that company, and then to go work for them in a more official capacity, kind of doing some similar type of work. And I think that's just like emblematic of that type of relationship and opportunity that URI, you know, set up for me in terms of like a externship or internship, if you will.
Yeah, so my experience has been pretty similar. I think you know, throughout my time in the graduate program, there was always a lot of encouragement to submit your research or whatever it might be to whatever governing conference is, you know, the most important for that particular field or area. And actually, because of that kind of encouragement, you know, I've had the opportunity to present, you know, research projects all across the world, really, including Prague and China, Xi'an, China as well. So those are experiences that, you know, I would never have, I think, if it wasn't for kind of that constant encouragement from my advisors and kind of team around you that is pushing you to succeed and get out of your comfort zone a little bit. You know, nothing's more nerve-wracking than presenting, let's say, a methods topic to someone who invented the methods, who's sitting in the audience, you know. So, but certainly getting out of your comfort zone and practicing presenting your research to strangers, I think is pretty invaluable, and it can take us in pretty cool places too.
I did not do any internships or externships while doing my PhD at URI, but I think I will parallel that experience with multiple collaborations that your labs run with other labs, be it within the university or with outside universities. And a lot of these collaborations came from different panels that the professors used to attend, say with the FDA, with environmental toxicants or things like that. And that was an invaluable experience as well. You know, working with a completely different lab who has a completely new idea, and knowing how to get information that you need from them and how to get data out from them as a collaboration. I think that is what I learned.
A lot of you speak about working with completely different labs, or, you know, in a career that's completely different than maybe your PhD. What would you say to a prospective graduate student who has maybe a little bit of research experience or research experience in one field and wants to transition to something else? I find in the College of Pharmacy, each individual lab has a very niche focus. So what words of wisdom would you give to somebody who has experience, maybe is a little bit nervous to try something new, especially as an incoming graduate student where there's already everything feels new to them?
I think my first and foremost advice would be explore. Use media, LinkedIn, all of these professional networks that you have to know what exactly entails in that profession. A lot of times the job titles are, the idea might sound great to you, but just having a conversation with a person who is living that life would be extremely invaluable. Informational interviews are bread and butter for anybody who is trying to understand what they want to do. So get onto LinkedIn or look at your, any sort of network that you have. And you might not know what it entails. Talk to people, understand what you can. a lot of times, at least when you're doing your, say, a farm talks or a more traditional PhD, your ideas are you can be in research in academia or in the industry. But that's not true. There's a wide variety of flavors of positions that you can be in and move between. So I think the idea is if you don't know what you want to do, explore. If you think you know what you want to do, go and explore even more to get the reality of the situation.
Yeah, my advice would be, well, I guess I'll start with saying that URI College of Pharmacy is pretty unique, where the faculty and staff who are kind of the most important people are also the most approachable people. So, Dr. Rowley, for example, is very approachable. Dr. Kogut, it's hard to find people in those leadership positions are really easy to talk to, always have their door open. They'll be happy to discuss with you kind of anything and point you in the right direction. So I think, for me, when I was trying to figure out my life, when I was graduated with my PharmD and trying to figure out what to do next, that was one of the first steps I took was, just walked into Dr. Kogut's office, who's the head of the program, the Health Outcomes Research Program, and just sat down with him and talked to him about, whether or not the program would be a good fit for me and if it's something that, that I should pursue. So again, yes, just don't hesitate probably to reach out to, whichever respective program that you're interested in. Just talk to whoever is involved with that particular program, because, being a faculty position, you are in a unique position where you see students who both succeed and fail, right? So I would suspect that they could give you some really good advice into, what is important to, or what kind of qualities or drive that you might want to be interested in to succeed versus, that nightmare of being in the program for 7 years and then never finishing your dissertation, right? So.
Yeah, and I think just to add a little bit on what Nick's saying, and I'll have pretty similar advice. It's just pursue the work that interests you and that you're passionate about. Don't spend a lot of time worrying about, oh, is this the hottest topic, or is this going to be the most high impact type of research? If you're really interested in it and you're driven to do that work, then you're probably going to succeed in some capacity with it. I think the skills that you learn along the way from getting into those projects, doing research, putting publications together, learning to be collaborative, like that's more valuable to translate to a career in industry necessarily than like the exact topic that you were working on. So yeah, that if you're thinking about grad school, don't worry too much about the exact first, topic that you jump into. Just make it be something that you like.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll add is just to maintain that intellectual curiosity with things. If you're working on one track, don't be afraid to pivot to something else that maybe is complementary to what you're working on, and maybe you see that putting these two things together actually is beneficial. So I think, I'm not doing what I was necessarily trained to do in graduate school. And I think everyone's career path and trajectory, you're going to get exposed to different things in grad school. Year one versus your final year, you're going to have different experiences and exposures, and that ultimately is going to shape where you are at the end. Same thing for your career. You're going to move around and be exposed to different things in your role in industry, or if you pursue an academic career. And I think just make sure you pursue all those opportunities that are presented to you, and even the intangible opportunities that you may not see right in front of you right away. You'll look back in a couple of years and say, oh, actually, that was a really good thing. I'm glad I took that jump and did something that maybe put me out of my comfort zone. For me, I'm always putting myself out of my comfort zone. And to me, that's where I thrive, is jumping in and doing the things that maybe other people wouldn't want to do. And I think that's a personal thing. But I think for me, that was one of the elements of my career that started at URI, was kind of doing things that maybe were out of the norm.
You guys talk a lot about the learning curve that comes from going from your graduate degree from year one to year 5, if you end up continuing to 5 years, or from your graduate degree to your career, or even from your undergrad into your graduate degree. And I feel that's something that's very daunting for a lot of people who want to pursue further secondary education or higher education, or for wanting to enter industry and feeling not completely prepared. So how did you guys deal with not feeling fully prepared. You don't know everything about the role that you're going into, whether it's going from a bachelor's to a graduate degree or a graduate degree to a career. What would be some advice that you would give to these kinds of people who are viewing this trajectory as daunting?
I think just a sort of reassuring note to everyone first, if that's kind of where your mind is at, don't forget that it is in the best interest of, whether it's your first job or the first lab you want to work in or the first research project you want to work on, it is in the best interest of everyone involved for you to succeed. And like I personally at URI went through this a lot with, an in-brace student or someone who would come in to, work in the lab. And, my number one priority was to help this person get up to speed as quickly as possible and to really make sure that they knew and they learned everything that they needed to do, because that ultimately drove the project forward better. Because, me as a researcher, I'm one person. If I can be two people, that's better. And I think all the way along the way, when I was that person that didn't know anything, I found a lot more support everywhere that I turned, whether at URI or at my, industry careers, to get you to learn those skills that you absolutely need to succeed. So I would just say, like, don't be afraid to jump into something you don't know about. You'll find a lot more help along the way than I think you will starting out.
I think I'm going to echo what Rob said. There is a learning curve, but understand that everybody wants you to succeed, be it as a graduate student, be it as an early career individual in your cross function. Everybody wants you to succeed because it's on them, because they thought you were good. And don't stress a lot. I mean, there will obviously be failures. Understand that, especially if you're getting into a PhD program, understand that there'll be a lot of days where you won't be happy about the outcome of what you've done. But remember that you love science and you're doing this with an end goal in mind. So keep going at it. There's always, when you reach the end, you'll always cherish your memories, good and bad, when you look back.
Yeah, I'd say that, it is daunting sometimes when you think about it. I mean, that sense of imposter syndrome, right? Am I up to kind of the curve that everyone else is holding me up to, right? And I think kind of the best, at least in my experience, the best way to handle that is effort, right? That's kind of the only way to get around it is, put in the time and put in the work to learn new methods or things that you might not be totally informed on, or maybe something that you want to learn more. So again, always kind of develop your toolbox of skills and techniques that you have available to yourself. But again, I think this message is just kind of the theme where you can ask your peers and you can also ask your superiors for guidance and help and things like that. You shouldn't let the possibility of failure stop you from reaching your full potential, right? So I think really the only thing is just putting in the effort will certainly help you succeed in the future, hopefully.
One element that I would add is just and I think this is true for graduate school as well as in your professional career, is to have a good mentor, and it should not be your advisor. You should have somebody else at the university that you can go to, whether it's a committee member or somebody that you had a good relationship because you were in their class. Establish a relationship so you can bounce things off of them, because they can also be that sounding board. You may be super frustrated about a situation or something that's not going your way, and rather than blowing up about it, you can go talk to that person and they can say, I've been in your shoes, I understand where you're coming from, why don't you approach it this way? I think that's a really useful thing, is to build a relationship with people, maybe even outside of your dedicated group of people in your even in the College of Pharmacy. You can go find, as you mentioned, there's collaborators throughout the organization that you could find. And I think that's one really important element, is to just build that relationship, get a mentor who can help you even beyond leaving URI.
You all speak with so much expertise and so much ease because you've made it through graduate school, you're in your careers and you're doing great things. But do you feel like put yourself back into the shoes of a graduate student, and I'm one of them speaking right now, do you feel like there's anything that you could have done differently? And I'm sure a lot of the advice that you're giving now is probably based on the fact that you wish you had done 1 or 2 or 3 things differently in your experience. And is there anything that you could maybe give heed to some of the students that are watching so that they don't make those same mistakes, or they don't go down that specific path as they're embarking on their journey through graduate school? I know I'm hitting you with the philosophical questions right now.
I think
really appreciate these
I guess
answers.
this is a sort of loaded question. I think the one thing I can say is don't underestimate the pressure that professors or your advisor puts on you. There's a reason why they're doing that. They're trying to prepare you for a career. And I think at the time it's very easy to be stressed out or frustrated by things and beat yourself up over things. But you have to look at it from their perspective. They want you to go out and be a contributor in society and having an impact. And so they're really preparing you for that. Some people need a little bit more hands-on to get people to where they need to be. Other people don't, and I think that's a personal thing. But I think sometimes looking back, there's certainly times where you get frustrated about different aspects. And I think it's, the advice I would give is look at it as an isolated thing, not in a vacuum, because in the big scheme of things, you'll look back and say, I'm glad that they were hard on me maybe for that specific thing, or they pushed me to do that publication that I really didn't feel like I had time or didn't see the value of it at the time. I think it's important to realize that your advisor has what's best for you and that they want you to be successful. And through that, you may be doing things that at the time you don't think are valuable, but they really are.
Yeah, and I'll add as well, not so much a mistake or a pothole to avoid, but I think not hesitating is something that I would have done differently. I thought a lot about, I kind of miss working in a lab, or I'd like to do this. And then like my second year of pharmacy school and my third year of pharmacy school, and then I was like, all right, I'm finally going to ask someone about it. I probably could have done that a lot earlier and started to, it doesn't hurt to have that initial conversation, or to, do a 3-credit elective working in someone's lab to see if you're even interested in going to grad school and doing more research. And I think just having that lack of hesitation will help you make that decision. If it's right for you, you really have to seek out the opportunity and give it a try. I think it's easy for us to say that we all have good experiences, but we can't tell you what's right for you unless you really get in there and go for it. And the other thing that I would probably tell myself before is, I think others touched on this as well, it's just that a lot of things are going to fail, and that's totally fine. It's all going to work out eventually, but don't set your expectations and standards of research so high right up front, and bake a little bit of that in, and that'll build some resiliency along the way.
I think to follow up on Rob's point of there'll be failures. So I think something that a combination of what Karen and Rob both mentioned was coping mechanisms. Having a group of peers who you can show your frustrations to, a mentor, and many other professional circles who actually are mentoring circles available in the New England area and everywhere else. So I think something, if one, as Tara asked, if there was something that I would have done differently, I would have joined more professional circles than I did. Not that I'm angry about the fact that I did not, but I think it'll be very helpful just meeting more number of people with different ideas.
Yeah, I don't think I have too much else to offer except for just watch out. So basically, that last year and a half of your PhD program, there will be a lull when you are frustrated and you lost interest because you've been working on the same thing for the last year or so. And it's just important to, remain focused. You're almost at the end. So, but I think that's going to be a conversation for once you've already, made it through a couple of years under your belt of graduate school, because there will become a time and a lull where you just have to, grind, live the grind and finish up your projects tie up all the loose ends in terms of editing and manuscript and all those types of things. So I think to me, I would say, again, just to hang in there and put in the effort required to see the project from beginning to the end, instead of kind of letting off the gas even when you're close to the finish line. I think is pretty easy to do if you don't remain focused and diligent. Yeah.
Thank you for all that advice. And I'm sure a lot of prospective students, whether they're at undergraduate level or graduate level, would really take it to heart, because school in a pandemic, graduate school in general, these are a lot of new challenges that are being experienced by now the new recent graduates that are entering the workforce, that are entering graduate schools, transitioning by utilizing the pandemic. None of you were in school during the COVID-19 pandemic, but all of the students now currently applying to graduate school have been. And so I know you can't speak to what school is like or research is like during a pandemic, but I know you guys can speak to what COVID has done to your jobs, what you might see necessarily in the future of the biotech industry, of the pharmaceutical industry, and what skills you might think that students need to start building from now to be able to enter this new workforce, this new kind of this new angle of healthcare, this new world of healthcare.
So yeah, Tara, so I guess just to understand the question a little bit more, you're asking about how COVID and the pandemic has kind of just like changed the workplace and grad school and that whole.
Yeah, how has it changed maybe the biotech industry, the pharmaceutical industry? Do you have any maybe pieces of advice for students that might be graduating, going out into the industry, or like how they're going to be able to, I apologize, maybe I'm going to backtrack. It's very easy for me as a student to be able to speak of how life has changed. And I know a lot of students can be able to see that, but I know many people have talked about work from home. How do you transition from being a laboratory scientist to now working from home? Are these skills, can they be translated? So really any kind of piece of advice that you have, you've been through it all. You've been through the workforce without COVID and now with, and we're going to be entering a world, I think, where it's going to be integrated for the time being.
Yeah, so I'll jump in first. I'm not a lab role in my role, so that transition I didn't have to make, but there's definitely some collaborative hindrances with a world that is mostly connected via Zoom meetings, and the irony of us being on that right now is not lost on me. But I think staying organized and staying focused throughout working from home has been one of the kind of key pearls from that. Like you are in control so much more in biotech now if you're working remotely than before you're at your desk at the office. Your day will fly by with water cooler conversations and side meetings and lunch meetings, and in a sort of remote environment, I think that you have a little bit more of your control back, but it's easy to also be distracted by everything else going on around you that's not work. So I think just from biotech in general, and again, I'm not speaking from perspective of those that work in the lab, but we're probably going to move to this more type of hybrid environment. At least a lot of the companies in Cambridge that I've colleagues working at have done that to some extent. I've had colleagues go fully remote, full time, with no intention ever of returning to even a couple days a week in the office. And so I think that's definitely coming for the industry. But if you're in grad school or you're considering going into it, I think that the work that we do is just as we're just as capable, and it's just as meaningful, even with a slightly different workplace than maybe we were used to seeing with like an office type of life.
I think so. Mine is not a lab role either, but I deal with a lot of data from the lab. So it has not changed. If you were working on the bench, it was a lot of adjustments in the industry. Also, my role is something that reports through research, but I work from discovery through development and post-marketing. So research, I don't think, is ever going to go completely off-site. There's people who have to be there. So it's always going to be either a function by function distinguishing between whether they're off-site or on-site. As far as the work efficiency goes, I think all, if not most, employers have been great about providing the essentials or equipping employees to be as efficient or even more efficient now that they're working from home. And as far as running, coping with labs, or your question on, you were a lab rat, but now you're not a lab rat. How do you cope with that? I had to go through that, going from being a lab rat into a position where you delegate things to your monitors or subordinates or your collaborators in the CROs, and leave all the control to them. It will be a learning curve there as well, but what helps is understanding the fact that people who you're delegating to are equally capable. So you will go through phases of, I'm not under control of my own experiments, but people who you delegate to are sometimes even more capable in terms of the technical expertise than you.
One thing I would just add, I think it's going to be, I mean, hopefully by the time people entering grad school now, by the time you join the workforce, things are back to a semi-normal. I think they're getting back there. I think the tricky thing is going to be for the people that are graduating this year or the next year, where you're kind of joining in a transition period where you won't know anything different other than this potential work from home if you're moving to a role like that, unless you're going to go to a lab. So I think there it could be a little tricky because you're trying to build the relationships with the team, build the relationships with your organization. So I can imagine coming in and feeling really just, it would be challenging because you're trying to assimilate into the culture of the company and you don't have that personal connection. So I think along that line, the advice that I would give is really just be questioning of that when you're interviewing with prospective employers, and talk to them about the culture and what they do to feel, so that you feel included in the culture, that you're going to be working remote and that you're joining obviously right out of a degree, and what type of culture do they have and how do they support people. I think that's an important question to ask. And if people don't ask during interviews, I am forthright and I explain it, because I think it's important for people to know what they're getting themselves into when they're joining an organization. I think it's also important if you're thinking about grad school, be curious. Say, what is the culture of your lab like? I mean, talk to people and figure it out, because I think if you don't do that and you join and it's not a good fit, it can be a problem. And I think you should be curious, you should be open, and the people that you're potentially either joining, whether it's grad school or an employer, you need to ask and probe them on that. And I think it's an important question for you to think about.
To add to what Karen was alluding to, especially for graduate students, something that a lot of employers do in the industry is an onboarding buddy, who is not just responsible, who is responsible for all the non-managerial stuff. So for people who are coming in now, maybe the graduate group can think about that sort of an arrangement where there's a buddy who will sort of keep tabs on you, ask you if you need anything, or help you through the first few months when you as a new grad student have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, I'm, I guess, unique because I started my career during kind of the Corona work from home, everyone get out of the city scenario. And I think it was lost for many months, I guess, in terms of those, interpersonal relationships with your team. A lot of those people I never met in person, and then also, again, like Karen was saying, the culture, what is the culture of your group and also the greater company. And actually there was a while there where I didn't even visit the offices yet. I lived basically a block away, but never actually walked into the building before. But since now that things are opening up, of course, I think one of the biggest things is to never turn down a social event opportunity. Always go out to the lunches or the happy hour, whatever it is, just to, because forming those relationships are much harder now in the world that we live in versus even 2 years ago, right? And I think it is important to have those kind of team bonding and whatever you want to call it, cliche experiences to actually be successful as a group and a team, but also to people get to know you and we can see what you are able to contribute as well, right? So that's also the other side of it.
So I think as we're wrapping up with the final few questions, to really echo everything you're saying, be forthright, ask questions, be adaptable, learn to delegate. And I think a lot of the advice that you're giving as people who are established in their careers or have started their careers really parallels introductory to graduate school as well. And so I really want you guys to just end this off by giving us what is one skill or experience that you think has been crucial to your careers, like so from graduate school, or what is one skill that you want students to start developing or to nurture if they already have it, so that they can be able to do that proper transition into graduate school, through it, and then to their career, especially now that we live in such an unpredictable world where we really don't know what it's going to be like by the time majority of these prospective graduate students make it to their career. So just one final pearl of advice for prospective graduate students, and I'm going to leave it to you guys.
I would say be curious, explore, and don't be scared of failure.
Yeah, I'd say the best skill to learn in grad school is just how to solve a problem that you don't know how to solve. Like, learn how to learn, I guess is the best way to put it. The more that you can understand that, the better that will continue to serve you as you come upon new challenges that you haven't faced.
So I think kind of the most important thing is probably the relationships with your peers and superiors, and being able to ask them for help, and also being able to provide help or advice when needed in kind of an appropriate way, and not seeming too elitist or anything like that. But just the important thing, I think, you're going to learn the skills to succeed, but I think it's that interpersonal communication and the kind of that relationship experience, I think, is one of the vital aspects of my graduate program that I was able to learn when I was there.
Yeah, I think one, I guess, advice that I could give, and I think back to when I was in graduate school, and I think we had an industry representative come, and I remember his name. He was Frank Sister, and he was at Merck Pharmaceuticals, and he was a URI alumni, and he came and talked to us, and I got super excited because here's this guy, he's very well established in his career, coming back to talk to us. So I think don't be afraid to make connections and reach out to people who you interact with during your time at URI, because you never know, they may be your boss, you may be their boss at some time. And I think it's important to just use those connections. I can tell you, like, from the lab that I was in to what I was in at Novartis, there was three people from my lab at URI that I was working with, in my role at Novartis. And I think it's just use the connections, use the relationships that you have, and make them strong, because they'll carry into your career. And I think they're super valuable.
So Tara, I think I'll jump back in here. This is David Rowley again. And we're at about an hour, and we've heard fantastic advice from our panel. And I want to thank Tara for being an expert moderator in our panel, for providing all of this advice. I really wish I had had the opportunity to hear all of this back when I was deciding to go to graduate school myself. There's definitely more than just a few pearls of wisdom here. So thank you very much to all of you. And I hope that this has been useful to our audience. And as I said at the outset of our panel discussion this evening, if you should have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. I think I heard somewhere in this last hour that we're very approachable. I would hope that's very true. So we look forward to hearing from you, and we hope that someday we may have the opportunity to launch your career much the same way that you've seen these 4 very talented individuals having launched their careers in the past. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at some point.